Ooh, hello. Do you see yourself in the mirror? Slipping through my fingers. Do you see yourself? Do you see yourself? Yes. Okay, I have wanted to film this and post this for 5 months, but as you can see, I have a really big boy and he is so healthy and beautiful. I love him so much, but he's definitely what one would call a Velcro baby. And he also was really like colic as a newborn. That's a whole nother story for another day, but here's my birth story. I had a really positive, completely unmedicated birth at a local birth center. And yeah, so I just wanted to first make a disclaimer, like, you should be proud of any way that you give birth, whether you give birth unmedicated, completely medicated, C-section, under a tree outside, in the back of your car, whatever. I think birth is beautiful, like, no matter what. I just personally did not want to give birth in a hospital because I have certain phobias, and I don't really want to get into that because I don't want to like trigger anyone, but I didn't want to give birth in a hospital. I did not want an epidural. My mom had like a horror story with an epidural, and I just knew I did not want one at all. And I also knew I did not want Pitocin because I just heard so many stories, and they all started the same way, and they all had something in common, and that thing that they had in common was that the person got Pitocin and was in the hospital, and it all started with a Pitocin induction. So I was like, I do not want Pitocin unless my son's life depends on it or my life depends on it. So anyway, let's get started on my story. If I'm looking down, it's because I have notes on my phone. So yeah, I already talked about why. I just personally wanted unmedicated. I also like being in control of my body. Like, I don't like drinking alcohol. In fact, I don't drink alcohol at all. I have before. I've had like a few drinks here and there when I was in college, and I would have like a glass of wine and feel drunk, and it would make me feel really anxious and panicky. And so any sort of anything that has any type of sedative effect freaks me out. And I know that, I just know from my friends, my family, and all these people that I visited in hospitals, it's like there's this cascade of interventions. You go in there, you get Pitocin, the pain's so bad, they give you a shot of this pain medicine, then you start to feel weird. I just didn't want that cascade of interventions, and I just love being in control of my own body, and I did not want to feel that way at all. And I feel like I would be having panic attacks if I wasn't able to like feel my legs. I would rather just be knocked out completely. So that is the reason why. So anyway, let's get started. My due date was March 12th, and I feel like that was a really accurate due date because my cycles and everything have always been really on time. So I waited. I waited until I was like 40 weeks and 4 days to have my very first like cervical check. That was on March 17th, a Friday, and I was only 2 centimeters dilated. And that's a big reason why I waited, because I knew it's like a numbers thing. Like, you could be 5 centimeters dilated for like 2 weeks and not go into labor and nothing happened at all. So I didn't want to check until I was past my due date and stuff. And so I was 2 centimeters dilated, but I was 75% effaced, and that was Friday morning of March 12th. I go home, and I'm obviously disappointed, and I decide to just bounce on my big old extra large tri-deer yoga ball for like 2 hours straight. I'm sitting there in the living room, bouncing just up and down gently, but for like 2 hours on that yoga ball. And a few hours later, I used the restroom, and I lost my mucus plug, or part of it, and started having that like bloody show stuff. So I texted my midwife, and she's like, ooh, it might be soon. Literally right after I texted her, it was around 7 p.m. I texted her about the bloody show. I start feeling contractions. And I remember asking people, like asking around, Googling, like, what do contractions feel like? And this, I will tell you exactly what they feel like. They feel like really intense period cramps mixed with a Braxton Hicks. And if you have never been pregnant or you don't know what a Braxton Hicks is almost kind of like a Charlie horse, but it's just involuntary muscle tightening. So imagine a contraction basically feels like your worst period cramp. Towards the end, it's the worst period cramp like you've ever had. You know, before you take an Advil, before you take a Motrin or anything, it's that worst period cramp mixed with muscles tightening. That's what it feels like. But these first contractions that started on Friday night, they were like pain level 4 out of 10, but they felt exactly like period cramp mixed with that tightening feeling. So I knew they were contractions. Huge mistake I made that I don't recommend if you're gonna go through with an unmedicated birth is I downloaded an app and I started timing my contractions, like right after they started that Friday night. And I think it kind of was a little psychological. Obviously, they were a little intense and a little painful, but because I was timing them on my phone, I did not sleep at all that Friday night. And I was actually in the tub, laboring. I was laboring in the tub at like 2 a.m, timing my contractions. And they were every 4 to 5 minutes, lasting like a minute long. So I actually called my midwife at 4:30 in the morning. I was up all night, called her. She was so sweet. She met me at the birth center, me and my husband. I had all my bags in the car. Like I thought, oh, this is go time. Like he's gonna be born on this Saturday. It was the day after St. Patrick's Day. So now it's March 18th. But I was now only 2.5 centimeters dilated. So I did dilate 0.5 centimeters that day, but I was 90% effaced. And she said that when she checked me, she could feel his head and that he like squirmed a little bit. And she felt like I was definitely going to like go into like I was in labor for sure. And she thought he'd be born within the next 24 hours. And she just couldn't tell me when. And I hated that. Like, because like I said, I like being in control of everything. And I remember asking her, like, is it going to be in an hour? Is it going to be in 10 hours? Is it going to be in 23 hours? And she just couldn't tell me. But since I was only 2.5 centimeters dilated, they wouldn't admit me to the birth center. So I just had to go back home and labor some more at home. So that's what I did. It's now Saturday, 4:30 in the morning. We drove through somewhere, got some biscuits to eat. And I was still having those contractions every 5 minutes, and they were just getting more intense by the hour. And by intense, I mean more painful by the hour. So we tried to watch a movie. I tried to watch Saturday Night Fever with John Travolta. I'll never watch it again because it now reminds me of labor. But tried to watch a movie, tried to distract myself. Something that really helped amazingly during my labor was getting a plastic fine-tooth comb and putting the comb part in the palm of your hand. And every contraction, you squeeze it. You squeeze it as hard as you can. And it's something called the gate theory. Look it up. It works. I swear by it. That is one of my top pain relief advice for an unmedicated birth. Definitely try out the gate theory stuff. Am I even in focus? I sure hope so. Okay, let me look down. So by like Saturday early afternoon, I was in so much pain. I remember my back was hurting really bad. I had back labor and front labor. It was all around. And I was using a heating pad and I was using a hot water bottle, and then I went into the tub, and I was in the tub for like almost 2 hours, and it was really hot. I got out of the tub, and then of course, I immediately put the heating pad back on me. And I think I accidentally overheated because I ended up feeling really weird. Like I didn't feel chills, but I just felt, I knew I was having a fever. I felt feverish. So I go and I test my temperature, and it's now like Saturday, like 6:30 p.m. I've been laboring all day in the tub with the heat, trying to watch a movie, using the ball. My husband would massage. He would do the counter pressure on my hips. Like he would just basically squeeze my hip bones together really hard each contraction. That helped a lot as well. But I'm feeling feverish, so I check my temperature and it's 102. So obviously I freak out, text my midwife. She says, yeah, we gotta check you out, like come to the birth center right now. They check me out. I don't have any other like symptoms other than a fever. And she's like, okay, we have to get this fever down. Like it has to go down in the next 30 minutes or you're gonna have to go to the hospital. And of course I'm like, oh my gosh, so I've planned this unmedicated out of hospital birth this whole time and I have a fever. What is happening? So she makes me take 2 Tylenol, because Tylenol is safe whenever you're pregnant. I didn't take any Tylenol my whole pregnancy. I didn't want to for various reasons, but I didn't take anything my whole pregnancy. And I remember crying. I didn't want to take the Tylenol. I was like, I can't take it, but I had to. She's like, if you don't take this, like what's gonna happen is you're gonna go to the hospital and they're gonna give you an IV drip of Tylenol anyway, and then you'll probably get this and that. And I was like, okay, whatever. So I just took the 2 Tylenol. And about 25 minutes later, my fever went away, and it stayed away. And I forgot to say, before I took the Tylenol, my midwife checked me, and I was now like 4.5 centimeters. So there was some steady progression going on with the dilation. But also something really big is that I was 100% effaced. So I was like 4 centimeters dilated, but totally effaced. He was right there, like ready to go. He was in the perfect position. I just was not dilated all the way. They went ahead and decided to admit me, which was great. Usually they don't admit women until they're like 6 centimeters. I was 4 centimeters, but because I had been up all night Friday night and this is my first baby and all this stuff, like I guess they just wanted to admit me. So they did, and I was able to stay there. The birth center, I'll have to insert some pictures. A beautiful old Victorian home. Just a really, really charming place, and I gave birth upstairs, like in a bedroom. They had a big, huge, like the biggest tub ever. I labored in and out of the tub. It was 2 midwives, 1 midwife left, and then 2 birth assistants. 1 birth assistant was an RN and a doula, and she was amazing. But anyway, I took the Tylenol. 30 minutes, fever went down. At this point, it's like 9 p.m. Saturday, March 18th, and it hurts so bad. The contractions really are hurting. They are imagine the worst period cramps you've ever had mixed with a Charlie horse or a Braxton hicks in your lower abdomen, plus my back. And it would happen now at this point, like I wasn't timing, but probably I know toward the end, it was like every minute almost. And I would have a little break, which was nice, like a 30-second minute break, but they were just, it was happening. So at around midnight, they checked me. At that point, yeah, I'd been just in the tub, doing the counter pressure, doing the gate theory. That's how I was managing my pain. And bouncing on that tri-deer ball, I swear, like it just really helps when you're going through labor to just bounce on a ball. But it's now around midnight, and my midwife comes and she checks me. I had progressed to 7 centimeters, and I hadn't broken my water or anything naturally, so she asked if she could break my water and that would help things progress like faster. So I was like, hey, yeah, do it. So she did it. It didn't hurt at all. It was a very weird feeling. It was almost just like water pouring out of you, but you can't feel it. Like it's not like the sensation of like using the bathroom or anything. It's just literally liquid pouring out of me. They caught it in something, and that was at midnight. And after that, I think honestly, like adrenaline and instinct somehow kicked in. I have had no sleep, since Thursday night. It's now technically Sunday morning at like 2 a.m. I'm in the tub. I'm laboring again in the tub. The doula, birth assistant is doing the counter pressure. My husband is helping doing the counter pressure. I haven't mentioned my husband. My husband helped a lot with the counter pressure, basically just squeezing your hips together every contraction. And I'm also squeezing this comb every contraction, just squeezing the heck out of it. It's now like 1 a.m. and I wasn't tired though. That's the weirdest thing. Like I did not feel exhaustion or tiredness. I feel like at this point around like 1, 2 a.m. adrenaline started kicking in and I knew it was going to be pretty soon. So I got out of the tub at one point. I think it was like probably I wasn't looking at the time. That's another thing that helped tremendously, is like pretty much after I got to the birth center and started laboring, I stopped looking at the time. Like we stopped looking at the watch. I did not know that it was 2 a.m. I didn't know at all, you know? So anyway, it's probably around 2:30 in the morning. They check me, I'm 9.5 centimeters, and they start telling me every contraction that you get, start pushing. And I should mention what position I'm in. I am on all fours on the bed. So on my hands and knees, but I'm actually leaning on this, it's this U-shaped inflatable, really tall thing. So I'm leaning on this U-shaped thing so I don't have to hold up my weight with my arms, but I'm leaning on this U-shaped thing and I'm on all fours and I'm pushing every contraction, and every time I pushed, it helped with the pain. It was the weirdest thing, like it was pain relief. Now, I remember I did start to feel a little bit tired after I was pushing for a little while, but I still had like a lot of adrenaline for sure. And then they got out this thing called a birth stool, which is like this little chair, and they put it on the floor, and she did not want me actually giving birth there. So she was like, once you feel that ring of fire or like a burning sensation, tell me. You're gonna get back up on all fours on the bed. I don't want you giving birth here because you'll tear really bad. But pushing in that position, in a seated position on that birth stool, really, really helped him just get down there, get to that point where he's about to be born. So I pushed on there for maybe like 5-10 minutes. I get back up on the bed, I'm still having contractions, and I push, you know, I'm on all fours. And then at one moment, she has me put my right leg out in a runner's pose. So I'm leaning on this thing, I'm on all fours, but I put my right leg out in like a runner's pose. I guess this is just to like open the pelvis as much as possible or whatever. And then I do, you know, they are obviously guiding me, telling me like this is the right pressure. I'm pushing, you know, they tell me like that's the right pressure, that's the way to do it. I just kept doing it, and then they were able to like see his head, and then I just pushed really, really hard and he came out. And I did not really feel like a ring of fire. I didn't feel like it did not hurt. Whenever I pushed this 10+ pound baby out, it did not hurt. I also tore. I had several 2nd-degree tears. I did not feel the tearing. So I don't know if like it was just adrenaline, if I don't know. I just did not feel any pain when he was coming out of my body. And I don't know if I had the fetal ejection reflex. I think I kind of did. I think like I was pushing him out, but also like my body just pushed him out. Just like the best way to describe it is it just was so instinctual. It was so natural. It just came naturally. I had no idea, but I was actually up there pushing on the bed and on the birth stool and then back on the bed for over 2 hours. I didn't know that I was pushing that long, but I was. And like I said, adrenaline, instinct, like I'm not looking at the time. Number one advice, don't look at the time. Your nurses and your midwives will look at the time. They're monitoring me, they're monitoring my heart rate, my blood pressure, all of that. They'll do it, they'll look at the time, just don't look at it. So anyway, he was born, and immediately I knew he was big. We all knew he was big. I didn't know how big he was. We didn't weigh him for about 30-40 minutes because I did delayed cord clamping and skin to skin, and he nursed and all of that. He actually pooped on me too. He didn't have a diaper on, but anyway, he was just laying on me, nursing for like over 30 minutes at least, and was on me actually for I think a whole hour before we weighed him or bathed him or anything like that. And then we weighed him and they were like, guess how much he weighs? And I was like, oh, 9 pounds, 8.5. No, 10 pounds, 2 ounces. My jaw dropped. I couldn't believe it. My husband couldn't believe it. Even our midwife couldn't believe it. So obviously they had to like test his blood sugar and stuff. He was totally fine. Turns out my father-in-law, who he's named after, was 10 pounds, 1 ounce. And my husband was like 9 pounds. And so big baby's just like running the family. And I had no idea he was going to be 10 pounds. He was 22 inches, 10 pounds, 2 ounces. And also, like I said, he pooped on me before he was weighed. So I really think if we were to have weighed him like immediately after he was born, he probably would have been like 10 pounds, 6, 10 pounds, 7 ounces, because that like meconium stuff is really heavy. So anyway, he was born, he was on me. It was great. At that point I was tired and I wanted to sleep, and I was able to go home about 4 hours later. They monitored me. I did have to have a shot of Pitocin. I know I talked about earlier how afraid I was of Pitocin. I was afraid of getting Pitocin while I was pregnant with a baby in my body, and it is really good like if you have a little extra bleeding, and I guess I had some bleeding that my midwife didn't really like, so I had to have a shot in my left thigh. It hurt, of Pitocin to like stop the bleeding, and it stopped the bleeding. So, you know, again, thank God for modern medicine. It's wonderful, but at the same time, like, I'm still really proud of myself for sticking with my plan. There were definitely times and moments that I didn't want to stick with my plan at all. I wanted to just have him get a C-section. I remember telling my husband, like, we need to just go to the hospital. Like, they need to just cut him out of me. This hurts so bad. And that was at the beginning stages of labor, like 12 hours before he was born. But I promise you, like, towards the end, instinct, adrenaline, it just takes over. And I also don't really like remember the pain. And the pain for me, it just all came very naturally. Everything was just really natural. He was born and I ate, one of the midwives went to IHOP and I ate IHOP, and then we drove home, and I was, you know, walking down the stairs, walking home, came home. This is the only time he's ever slept in his crib or anywhere, but he slept for like 4 hours in his crib whenever we got home, and I was able to get some really good rest. It was rough. The sleep deprivation is something that I feel like people don't really talk about with some labors. I wasn't able to sleep, again, like I said, that Friday night, and it really was my fault because I was on my phone timing every contraction, and the contractions weren't even that bad, and I probably could have fallen asleep and gotten some rest. So it was pretty bad because I was just awake for like over 48 hours straight, and I was really, really exhausted. That whole first week, I was really, really exhausted, and my biggest advice for postpartum, especially like the first 2 weeks, have help. Have your mom come stay with you, your mother-in-law, your aunt, your sister-in-law, whoever. If you're not close with family and you have the ability to hire someone, hire a postpartum doula, hire housekeepers, hire someone to come do your laundry. This is the time to get help and everything. But I thankfully did not have any like postpartum. I did have like a little bit of postpartum anxiety like that first week, but then I was able to catch up on sleep, and I took a bunch of probiotics, which again, I'm not a doctor or psychologist or anything like that, but there are a lot of studies that show probiotics are really beneficial for postpartum mothers and preventing depression and anxiety and all of that. You can literally just Google probiotic strains. It's like specific strains of probiotics, so you can't just go buy Yoplait yogurt. you know, there are some yogurts that have really beneficial probiotics. Like I do Lifeway Organic because it has specifically the strain L. rhamnosus. Anyway, that's another story. So that is my birth story, and definitely subscribe for more videos. If you want me to talk about my postpartum recovery, if you want me to talk about newborn essentials, if you want me to talk about things I regret buying, things I regret doing. But again, thank you so much for watching, and my biggest advice, if you want an unmedicated birth, don't time your contractions until like you really feel like you need to. Even then, I still would not time them unless they're like, I just didn't know what I was doing. Just don't time your contractions. If you want to ask your midwife. Work with a midwife if you can, a certified nurse midwife. Use the comb for gate theory. Look up counter pressure during labor. Have someone push on your hips every contraction. Bathtub is amazing. Don't overheat like I did. Give yourself some breaks. Drink lots of water, drink lots of orange juice, and pray. Pray a lot, and make sure you have support. I think that's probably up there a lot, is make sure that if you want an unmedicated birth, that your husband, your birth partner, your friend, whoever it is that you have there with you, your doctor, your nurse, your doula, make sure that they are encouraging you the whole time, because you're gonna have those moments like I did where you're gonna be like, oh, I want to go to the hospital. I want a C-section. Like, I want this to be over. And if you give into that, you know, that's okay. If that's what if that's what happens, that's what happens. But having someone like how I had my husband really encourage me, like, no, like, you want to go to the birth center, that's what you've wanted this whole time, like, you've gone to every appointment, you've read all these books, like, you want to have a natural birth, that's what you want. If I didn't have him telling me that, I really feel like I would have given in and gone to the hospital. So having that support system is really important for sure, as well. So anyway, thank you guys for watching, and bye. And subscribe. Bye.